The Osirion is a very, very unique and unusual temple-like structure found in Abydos in Egypt. It's found at the end of another temple, the Temple of Seti I.
Beneath 50 feet of sand and silence, in the sacred city of Abydos, lies a monument that seems to have been misplaced in time. Its stones are too large, its design too ancient, and its story entirely untold. But as engineers stared at its submerged granite blocks, something deeper emerged. A forgotten clue, found not in myths or hieroglyphs, but etched in erosion, began to rewrite the story we thought we knew about ancient Egypt. The hidden chamber beneath time. In 1902, British archaeologists digging behind the Grand Temple of Seti I in Abydos uncovered something they couldn't quite explain. Beneath centuries of silt and groundwater, they found an immense stone structure buried so deep underground that no record had ever mentioned its existence. When the water was drained and the mud cleared, what stood before them was not a tomb, nor a shrine, nor anything resembling the ornate hieroglyph-covered architecture of the New Kingdom. What they found was the Osirion, an underground hall built from blocks so large, some weighed over 100 tons, each one cut from unforgiving granite and fitted with uncanny precision. Seti I's temple, just steps away, is a masterpiece of traditional Egyptian elegance, painted reliefs, intricate columns, and a clear devotion to ceremonial detail. In contrast, the Osirion is stark. It lacks decoration, inscription, or any of the visual flourishes expected from its supposed era. The contrast is not subtle, it is jarring. Two monuments built within a heartbeat of one another in historical terms, yet they speak entirely different architectural languages. One whispers legacy, the other roars mystery. Archaeologists offered an official explanation. Seti I commissioned the Osirion as a symbolic tomb for Osiris, deliberately mimicking ancient styles to honor the god of the underworld. But that claim, as reasonable as it sounds, quickly begins to collapse under the weight of its own contradictions. A stone puzzle that shouldn't exist. To understand just how strange the Osirion is, we need to look at the way ancient Egyptians typically built. During the New Kingdom, roughly 1550 to 1077 before Common Era, construction focused on grand temples, detailed tombs, and the intricate artistry that defined the age of Egypt's empire. Stone blocks were relatively small, often limestone, and arranged with an eye toward elegance and religious narrative. Decoration was paramount, purpose was clear. Seti I's temple fits this mold precisely. The Osirion does not. Its core structure is built from colossal granite and sandstone blocks, some over 5 meters in length, assembled in a style that feels brutally utilitarian. The granite alone is a red flag, sourced from quarries nearly 200 kilometers away in Aswan. It's one of the hardest stones to carve, transport, and shape. Moving just one of these blocks would have demanded monumental resources. Yet here they are, stacked, aligned, and joined with a precision that defies expectation. Even stranger, these techniques echo something much older. The Osirion's design bears a striking resemblance to the Valley Temple of Giza, a structure dated to around 2500 before Common Era, some 1,200 years before Seti I's time. Both use massive blocks, tight joints, and minimal ornamentation. The resemblance isn't theoretical. Place images of the two side by side, and it's as if you're looking at twin monuments separated only by location. And that presents a profound problem. Why would Seti I suddenly revive a construction style abandoned for over a millennium, not just in appearance, but in engineering, labor, and material, especially for a monument he left completely undecorated? The answer offered by Egyptology is intentional archaism, a revival for symbolic effect. But even among Egyptian pharaohs who frequently borrowed from the past, this kind of full-scale architectural resurrection is nearly unheard of. Most symbolic nods came through decorative flourishes or stylistic motifs, not 100-ton blocks of granite. The inconsistencies grow more dramatic the closer we look. The Osirion wasn't just a stylistic outlier, it was a logistical anomaly. Its presence asks more than when it was built. It asks who had the means and why they stopped. the clues time left behind. When archaeologists first entered the Osirion, they weren't stepping onto a dry stone floor, they were wading into water. The entire central chamber was submerged in groundwater, surrounding a raised platform that appeared like an island in a flooded cathedral. It wasn't just an eerie visual, it was a geological clue hiding in plain sight. The depth of the Osirion is one of its most perplexing features. Unlike Seti I's temple, which rests at ground level, the Osirion was buried so deeply that it sat within the water table. Over time, centuries of Nile silt may have accumulated above it, but the degree of erosion on the stone suggests that the structure stood exposed, perhaps for millennia, before being entombed by sediment. The blocks show signs of sustained water exposure and surface weathering that simply don't align with a structure supposedly built 3,300 years ago and then immediately buried. What complicates the picture further is the contrast with Seti I's temple. Its stonework remains crisp, its reliefs well preserved. But just meters away, the Osirion bears scars of ancient elemental forces. Wear that geologists argue takes far longer to develop than the New Kingdom timeframe allows. If both were built around the same time, why does one appear almost untouched, while the other seems aged beyond its years? Then there's the design itself. That flooded central platform, often dismissed as a drainage flaw or unintended consequence, mirrors something far older and more symbolic, the Egyptian myth of creation. In those sacred stories, the world began as a vast dark sea from which the first mound of earth emerged. The Osirion appears to dramatize this myth in architecture, a solitary island rising from eternal waters. Was this flooding accidental, or was it the centerpiece of the design? If intentional, then the builders weren't merely stacking stone, they were orchestrating experience, aligning architecture with myth and geology. And that opens an entirely new line of inquiry. To build at the water table requires knowledge of its behavior, of long-term structural resilience in wet conditions, of stone jointing that can resist erosion for thousands of years. Yet, mainstream Egyptology maintains that New Kingdom builders, brilliant as they were, never built structures like this, and certainly not ones submerged on purpose. The deeper we dig, the more one question lingers. Could the Osirion have been built during a time when Egypt's knowledge of stone, water, and symbolism was at its peak, long before Seti I ever claimed it? When stones speak. In the 1990s, a quiet revolution began to ripple through the field of Egyptian archaeology. Not in the temples or tombs, but in the bedrock itself. Geologist Dr. Thomas L. Debicki and rogue Egyptologist Dr. John Anthony West conducted seismic and geological studies on the Great Sphinx, focusing on the enclosure walls surrounding it. What they found startled the academic community. The patterns of weathering weren't caused by wind or sand erosion, as had long been assumed. Instead, they appeared to be the result of sustained rainfall, something the Giza Plateau hadn't seen since long before 2500 before Common Era. This conclusion implied a radical possibility that the Sphinx, or at least its enclosure, may have been carved thousands of years earlier than previously believed, during a time when Egypt's climate was vastly different. While this theory remains controversial, it has never been fully refuted, and it has since reframed the way some researchers look at out-of-place structures like the Osirion. Here's why that matters. The Osirion and the Valley Temple near the Sphinx share uncanny architectural similarities. The same massive granite blocks, the same minimalist aesthetic, the same impossible precision. If both show signs of ancient water damage inconsistent with their supposed ages, then we may be looking at two parts of the same forgotten architectural lineage, a tradition of monumental construction that peaked before dynastic Egypt began recording history in stone. The Sphinx research didn't just challenge a single monument's timeline, it cracked open the possibility that a whole chapter of human engineering might have been misplaced. In that light, the Osirion doesn't look like a bizarre anomaly. It looks like a surviving member of an elite class of ancient structures, those whose true age is measured not in dynastic lists, but in weathered stone and the slow memory of water. Who built it and why did they stop? If the Osirion was not built by Seti I, then who built it? And why is there no record, no inscription, no dedication, no blueprint of its construction? These are the questions that drift just beneath the surface of its flooded hall, unanswered yet impossible to ignore. The official story hinges on proximity because the Osirion sits directly behind Seti's temple and connects through a corridor. It must have been his project, but that logic quickly unravels when we remember that ancient builders often repurposed older sites. Temples were claimed, buried structures reused, names overwritten like palimpsests in stone. There are inscriptions linking Seti I to the passageways that lead into the Osirion, but the core structure itself remains silent. No cartouches, no hieroglyphs, no signature of pharaonic pride. For a ruler known for ornate inscriptions and lavish monuments, that silence is deafening. It suggests not a deliberate simplicity, but a kind of historical annexation. Seti I may have discovered the Osirion already standing, then integrated it into his sacred complex. This interpretation solves multiple puzzles at once: the architectural mismatch, the advanced construction techniques, the depth and weathering, the total absence of decoration. And it raises a deeper, more unsettling possibility. What if the Osirion was the product of a civilization predating the Old Kingdom? A culture whose engineering mastery rose and vanished before dynastic Egypt even began. Mainstream archaeology resists this hypothesis not because of the evidence, but because of its implications. It would require rethinking the trajectory of human history in the Nile Valley. It would suggest that advanced construction, rather than evolving slowly, peaked early and then faded, leaving behind only silent monuments and a trail of anomalies. We may never know why the builders stopped. Perhaps it was climate collapse, societal upheaval, or knowledge simply lost to time. But the Osirion remains, not as a ruin, but as a record, one that doesn't speak in words, but in stone. Buried beneath centuries of silence, the Osirion whispers a truth carved in stone, that history isn't always written by the victors. It's sometimes left behind by the forgotten. Could we be missing an entire chapter of human achievement? Let us know what you think in the comments below.